My best friend destroyed my wedding, revealing she's pregnant with my fiancé's baby. The whole thing was a con. I object. Those 2 words, spoken by my best friend, at my wedding altar, in front of 300 people. Tessa, what are you doing? This isn't funny. Tell her, Grayson, or I will. I watched my fiancé's face drain of color. His hands dropped mine like they burned him. And in that moment, before she even said the words, I knew my entire life was about to implode. I'm pregnant, with Grayson's baby. The gasps, the cameras flashing. My mother screaming from the front row. My father lunging for Grayson's throat, while groomsmen held him back. And me, standing there in my $10,000 wedding dress while my maid of honor, my best friend since we were 7 years old, announced she was carrying my fiancé's child. But here's what I didn't know that day. What no one knew. The pregnancy announcement? Planned. The affair? A setup. The baby? Not even his. The entire thing was an elaborate con to steal $8 million. And the moment I discovered the truth 3 years later would prove that sometimes the worst day of your life is actually the best thing that ever happened to you. I'm Serena, and this is the story of how betrayal destroyed me and how that destruction saved my life. Before we go any further, I need you to do something for me. If you believe in karma, if you believe that justice eventually finds everyone, if you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted with your whole heart, hit that like button right now. And drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, or just say I'm with you, Mr. Hearthline, because this story is going to take you places you won't expect. And I promise you, by the end, you'll understand why some doors need to slam in your face to get you where you're actually supposed to be. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. 6 months before the wedding that never happened, I had everything. Or, at least I thought I did. My name is Serena Martin. I was 27 years old, working as a senior marketing director at a boutique firm in Manhattan, and engaged to Grayson Hayes. If you don't recognize the name, Grayson was the 30-year-old CEO of a tech company that had just hit unicorn status. Billion-dollar valuation. 30 under 30. The kind of man mothers pointed out to their daughters as proof that fairy tales could happen in real life. We met 5 years earlier at a networking event I almost didn't attend. I was 22, fresh out of college, working at a startup that paid me barely enough to cover my studio apartment in Queens. I'd gone to the event because my boss insisted, wearing a dress I'd bought on sale and shoes that pinched my feet. I was standing by the bar, trying to look like I belonged, when someone bumped into me and sent my wine splashing across my dress. Oh God, I'm so sorry. Let me help you. I looked up into the most genuine pair of brown eyes I'd ever seen. He was tall, well-dressed, apologetic in a way that seemed real rather than performative. He grabbed napkins. He insisted on paying my dry cleaning bill. He introduced himself as Grayson. No last name, no mention of the company, no flex about his money or status. Just Grayson, who felt terrible about ruining my dress and wanted to make it up to me by buying me dinner. That first dinner turned into a second. The second became a third. Within 3 months, we were inseparable. He was everything I'd ever wanted. Thoughtful, ambitious. He remembered details about conversations we'd had weeks earlier. He brought me coffee the way I liked it, without me having to ask. He supported my dreams of eventually starting my own marketing agency. He made me feel seen in a way I'd never experienced. When he proposed a year ago, he rented out the restaurant where we had our first date, filled it with candles and flowers, got down on one knee with a ring that probably cost more than my annual salary, asked me to be his wife in front of a photographer he'd hired to capture the moment. I said yes before he even finished the question. The wedding planning started immediately, and that's where Tessa came in. Tessa Clark had been my best friend since 2nd grade. We met on the playground when we were 7 years old. She was the new kid sitting alone at lunch, and I invited her to sit with me. From that day forward, we were inseparable. Sleepovers every weekend. Matching friendship necklaces we bought at the mall when we were 12. Shared diaries where we wrote about boys and dreams and futures we'd build together. She was the sister I never had, the person who knew every secret, every fear, every hope I'd ever had. Tessa, I need you to be my maid of honor. There's no one else I'd want standing next to me. She'd cried when I asked, real tears streaming down her face, hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. Of course I'll be your maid of honor. I'm so happy for you, Serena. You deserve this. You deserve everything. And I believed her. Why wouldn't I? We'd been best friends for 20 years. She'd been there for every major moment of my life. My first heartbreak, my father's heart attack when I was 19, my college graduation, every achievement, every failure, every moment that mattered. She'd been there, always. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have known, was that beneath the surface of our friendship, something toxic had been growing for years. Seeds of jealousy that had been planted so long ago that by the time they bloomed, they'd already poisoned everything. Let me take you back, not to my story, but to Tessa's. Because to understand what she did, you need to understand where it started. Tessa was 12 years old. It was a Tuesday night in her apartment in the Bronx, a one-bedroom apartment she shared with her mother, sleeping on a pull-out couch in the living room because they couldn't afford anything bigger. Her mother worked 2 jobs, but it was never enough. There was always more month than money, always bills piling up, always the stress of barely surviving. That particular Tuesday, Tessa's mother came home after a double shift at the diner where she waitressed. She was exhausted, drunk. She did that sometimes, stopped at a bar between jobs to take the edge off the endless grind of poverty. Tessa had learned to recognize the signs, the slightly unsteady walk, the smell of cheap vodka mixing with fryer grease and cigarette smoke. Tessa had been doing homework at their small kitchen table. She'd gotten her math test back that day, a C-. She'd tried so hard, stayed up late studying, but numbers just didn't make sense to her the way they seemed to for everyone else. Her mother dropped her purse on the counter, looked at the test sitting there with the red C- circled at the top. Another C? Really, Tessa? I studied, Mom. I tried. Not hard enough, apparently. You know who doesn't get C's? Serena. Serena gets straight A's. Serena makes honor roll every semester. Tessa's chest tightened. She was used to the comparisons. Her mother loved Serena. Thought she was perfect. The daughter she wished she had instead of the one she got stuck with. Serena's parents can afford tutors. We can't. Her mother laughed, bitter and sharp. That's not the only difference. Serena is pretty. You're plain. Serena is charming. You're awkward. Serena has something special about her. You're just ordinary. Tessa stared at her homework, tears burning behind her eyes. Sometimes I think about what life would be like if I could trade you. If I could have Serena as my daughter instead of you. At least then I'd have something to be proud of. Her mother stumbled to her bedroom, left Tessa sitting at that kitchen table, 12 years old, feeling like she'd been carved out from the inside. That was the moment. The exact moment when love started curdling into something else. Because Tessa did love Serena, genuinely loved her. Serena was kind and loyal and the best friend Tessa had ever had. But sitting there at that table, absorbing her mother's words, a thought crept in that would grow and grow until it consumed everything. If Serena didn't exist, maybe I would be enough. If Serena wasn't there to compare me to, maybe I would be the pretty one, the smart one, the special one. She didn't steal my life on purpose, but she has the life that should have been mine. Years passed. The friendship continued, but that poison was always there, underneath. Every time Serena got something good, every achievement, every success, Tessa smiled and celebrated and felt that jealousy digging deeper. When Serena got into a better college, when Serena landed the good job, when Serena met Grayson and he turned out to be not just successful but wealthy, not just wealthy, but a billionaire. That was when jealousy became rage, consuming, obsessive rage. Tessa was 26 years old, working as an administrative assistant, living in a studio apartment. She could barely afford, drowning in student loans from a degree that hadn't opened any doors. and Serena was planning a $2 million wedding to a man worth hundreds of millions. The universe had made a mistake, given the wrong girl the right life, and Tessa decided she was going to correct it. She met Rhett Donovan at a bar in Brooklyn. It was a Friday night. She'd gone alone because she had no one to go with, nursing a drink she couldn't afford, watching happy people live happy lives she'd never have. He sat down next to her, tall, handsome, charming in that dangerous way that should have been a red flag but felt like attention she was starving for. They talked. He was smooth, said all the right things, made her laugh, made her feel seen. They went home together that night, started seeing each other regularly, and 3 weeks in, after too much wine at his apartment, she told him about Grayson. My best friend is marrying a billionaire. Can you imagine? A literal billionaire. The wedding is going to cost $2 million. $2 million. For one day. Rhett went very still. What's his name? Grayson Hayes. He owns that tech company that just hit unicorn status. She's so lucky. She has no idea how lucky she is. What Tessa didn't know was that Rhett wasn't just a charming guy she met at a bar. He was a con artist, a convicted felon who'd served 2 years for embezzlement at his previous employer. He'd gotten out 6 months earlier, been trying to go straight, but the pull of the game was too strong. And Tessa had just handed him the opportunity of a lifetime. You know what's interesting? Rhett said slowly. Billionaires are often the easiest marks. They're so confident in their ability to read people that they don't see the con coming until it's too late. What do you mean? I mean, if someone wanted to, they could probably get very close to someone like Grayson Hayes, close enough to take him for everything. Tessa looked at him. Something shifted in the air between them. How would someone do that? Rhett smiled. Well, they'd need someone on the inside, someone he already trusts, someone who could create chaos at exactly the right moment to make him vulnerable. Talked through the night, planning, scheming. The plan took shape like something inevitable. Tessa would seduce Grayson, get pregnant with Rhett's baby, but tell Grayson it was his, destroy the wedding in the most public, humiliating way possible, to ensure Serena ran far away and never came back, position herself as the wronged woman who got pregnant during a moment of weakness, make Grayson feel obligated to stay with her, marry him. And then over the course of several years, Rhett would get a job at Grayson's company, and they'd systematically embezzle millions, small amounts at first, nothing that would trigger immediate alarms, building to larger transfers as they established patterns and blind spots in the accounting. After 3 years and $8 to $10 million, they'd disappear together. New identities, new country, new life. The long con, the beautiful con. What about Serena? Tessa asked. Won't she try to stop it? Rhett shook his head. If you humiliate her publicly enough, she'll be too destroyed to fight back. Shame is paralyzing. You hit her hard enough at that wedding, she'll run and never look back. She'll be too broken to be a threat. Tessa thought about 12-year-old her, sitting at that kitchen table, absorbing the message that she'd always be second best to Serena. She thought about 20 years of watching Serena get everything while she got nothing. She thought about the wedding, the billionaire, the life that felt stolen. Okay, let's do it. The affair started 2 months later. Months before the wedding, Tessa made herself indispensable to the wedding planning. She was at Serena's apartment constantly, helping with invitations, managing, vendor calls, keeping spreadsheets of RSVPs and seating charts. And when Serena was at work, Tessa would stay late. Grayson would come home to find her there, organizing, helping, making his fiancé's life easier. You're amazing, you know that? Grayson said one evening. Serena is so lucky to have you. I just want her to be happy. She deserves the perfect wedding. They started talking more. Late nights while Serena worked late on a campaign pitch, Tessa learned to read him, learned his doubts. And Grayson, like many people facing a major commitment, had doubts he hadn't voiced to anyone. Are you nervous about the wedding? Tessa asked one night. Grayson hesitated. A little. Is that normal? Completely normal. Marriage is a big step. It's just, what if I'm too young? What if there's something better out there and I just don't know it because I've been with Serena for so long? Tessa leaned in slightly. You're 30 years old. You've built an empire. You have your whole life ahead of you. Are you really ready to close all other doors forever? I don't know. Maybe. I love Serena. She's great. But she's safe. Predictable. I know exactly how every day with her will go. Is that enough? Or is that settling? Tessa put her hand on his arm. You deserve someone who challenges you. Someone who makes you feel alive, not just comfortable. That was how it started. The seeds of doubt, watered carefully. Then, one night, after a particularly stressful venue tasting where nothing went right, and Serena had to leave early for a work emergency, Grayson and Tessa ended up alone. He'd had too much champagne. She'd positioned herself perfectly. When he leaned in to kiss her, she kissed him back. The affair continued for 8 months, in Serena's bed while she was traveling for work, in Grayson's penthouse when Serena thought Tessa was home, in hotel rooms booked under fake names, and 6 weeks before the wedding, Tessa got pregnant, exactly as planned. She'd stopped taking birth control pills weeks earlier, had been tracking her cycle, had made sure to sleep with both Rhett and Grayson during her fertile window. The baby was definitely Rhett's. The timing made it plausible it could be Grayson's. Perfect. She didn't tell Grayson about the pregnancy. Not yet. That reveal needed to be timed for maximum impact, maximum destruction. The wedding itself. The morning of the wedding, I woke up believing it was the best day of my life. I was in the bridal suite at the venue, a gorgeous estate with gardens that looked like something from a fairy tale. My bridesmaids surrounded me, champagne flowing, laughter filling the room. My mother was crying happy tears, telling me how beautiful I looked. And Tessa was right there, adjusting my veil, making sure every detail was perfect. You look absolutely stunning, Serena. Grayson is the luckiest man alive. I squeezed her hand, tears already forming. I couldn't have done any of this without you. You're not just my best friend. You're my sister. I love you so much. She hugged me. I couldn't see her face over my shoulder, couldn't see the coldness in her eyes. The calculation. I love you too, Serena. More than you know. What I heard was affection. What she meant was something else entirely. I love you enough to have stayed your friend for 20 years, while hating everything you represented. I love the life you have enough to destroy you to take it. 300 guests filled the garden, white roses everywhere, exactly how I'd always dreamed. A string quartet played softly as people took their seats. Society magazines had photographers positioned throughout the venue. This wasn't just a wedding. It was an event, the kind of wedding that would be featured in publications that people would reference for years as the standard of elegance and romance. My bridesmaids walked down the aisle in their blush pink dresses. Then Tessa, my maid of honor, carrying a bouquet of white peonies, smiling at the guests. She took her position at the altar. Grayson stood there in his custom tuxedo, looking nervous but happy, looking at the aisle, waiting for me. The music changed. Everyone stood. My father offered me his arm. You ready, sweetheart? I've never been more ready for anything in my life. We walked. Every step felt like floating. The guests were blurs of smiling faces. All I could see was Grayson at the end of that aisle. All I could feel was the overwhelming joy of this moment finally arriving. We reached the altar. My father kissed my cheek, placed my hand in Grayson's, took his seat next to my mother, who was already sobbing. The officiant smiled at us, began the ceremony with traditional words about love and commitment and the sacred bond of marriage. I barely heard him. I was too busy looking at Grayson, memorizing his face, thinking about the life we were about to build together. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to witness the union of Serena and Grayson in holy matrimony. Marriage is a commitment not to be entered into lightly, but with full awareness of its sacred responsibilities. We exchanged the preliminary vows, promised to love and cherish. Grayson's voice shook slightly. I was crying openly. This was everything, everything I'd ever wanted. The man I loved, promising forever, in front of everyone who mattered. If anyone has any reason why these two should not be joined in marriage, speak now or forever hold your peace. Silence. It was always just a formality. No one actually objected at weddings. It was just traditional language that, I object. The words came from behind me. Tessa's voice. Clear, loud, certain. I turned, confused. The entire garden went silent. 300 people stopped breathing at once. Tessa stepped forward from her position as maid of honor, walked around to face me and Grayson directly. Her face wasn't apologetic or conflicted. It was determined, almost triumphant. Tessa, what are you doing? I tried to laugh, certain this was some kind of joke I wasn't understanding. Some maid of honor tradition I'd never heard of. Tell her, Grayson. She looked directly at him, ignoring me completely. Tell her, or I will. I looked at Grayson. His face had drained of all color. His hands, which had been holding mine, dropped away like I'd burned him. And I knew, before she said another word, before the truth came out, I knew from his face, from his silence, from the way he couldn't meet my eyes. Something terrible was about to happen. Grayson? My voice came out small, scared. Tell her what? Tessa turned to face the 300 guests, spoke loudly enough that every single person could hear. I'm pregnant. Gasps rippled through the crowd. I shook my head, not understanding why she was announcing this now, at my wedding, in the middle of the ceremony. Tessa, that's wonderful, but why are you? I'm pregnant with Grayson's baby. The world stopped. Time stopped. My brain couldn't process the words. They didn't make sense. They were sounds arranged in a way that violated reality. Pregnant. Grayson's baby. Those words together created something impossible. What? My voice didn't sound like mine. No, that's not funny. Tessa, stop. I'm not joking. Tessa's voice was steady, calm, like she was announcing the weather. Grayson and I have been sleeping together for 8 months. I'm 12 weeks pregnant. I'm carrying his son. She placed her hand on her stomach. The gesture looked practiced, performative. And that's when the garden exploded. People gasping. Someone screamed. Cameras started flashing like lightning. Everyone talking at once. My mother's voice rising above the chaos. A sound of pure anguish. My father standing up, shouting, moving toward Grayson with violence in his eyes. Groomsmen jumping forward to restrain him. And I just stood there, in my wedding dress. My $10,000 ivory lace wedding dress with the cathedral train and the hand-embroidered details. Stood there while my brain tried to make sense of impossible information. I turned to Grayson, looked at him, begged him, with my eyes, to deny it. To tell everyone this was insane. To defend me, defend us, defend the 5 years we'd spent building toward this moment. Tell them she's lying. My voice cracked. Grayson, please, tell them. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. No words came out, just guilty silence. Silence that confirmed everything Tessa had just said. Silence that destroyed me more completely than any words could have. Say something. I was begging now. Please, just say something. I'm sorry. His voice was barely audible. I didn't mean for it to happen. I'm so sorry. Not a denial. A confession. An apology. An admission of guilt. The cathedral of my chest collapsed. Every support beam crumbled. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't process. I turned to Tessa, to my best friend, the girl I'd known since we were 7 years old, the girl who'd been at every important moment of my life, the girl I'd asked to stand next to me on the most important day of my life. How could you? The words scraped out of my throat. You're my best friend. You're my sister. We've known each other for 20 years. How could you do this to me? Tessa's expression didn't change. No guilt, no remorse, just cold calculation. Because he was never really yours, Serena. You don't own him. People make choices. He chose me. I felt hands on my arms, my bridesmaids trying to steady me because my legs were giving out. The garden was chaos now. Guests standing, shouting, arguing, photographers capturing every moment of my destruction. The society magazines getting photos that would be on every gossip site by morning. The fairy tale wedding becoming a viral catastrophe. My mother pushed through the crowd, reached me, wrapped her arms around me as I started to shake. "Baby, we need to get you out of here." But I couldn't move, couldn't look away from Tessa, who stood there so calmly, like she'd just done something noble instead of detonating my entire life. "I'm so sorry to do this here," Tessa said to the crowd, playing to them like an actress on stage. "But I couldn't let Serena marry him while living a lie. She deserves to know the truth. She deserves to make an informed choice." She was performing, making herself the hero of this story, the brave truth-teller who risked everything to save her best friend from a terrible mistake. The guests who didn't know better might actually buy it. "You planned this," I whispered. The pieces were clicking into place through my shock. "You planned to do this here. In front of everyone, you wanted to humiliate me." "I wanted to be honest with you," Tessa said, but her eyes told the real truth. They were cold, satisfied. This was exactly what she wanted. My father finally broke free of the groomsmen, holding him back, lunged at Grayson, got one hand on his collar before people pulled him away. "You son of a bitch. I'll kill you. I'll fucking kill you. Dad, no." I found my voice. "Don't. He's not worth it." I looked at Grayson one more time. He was crying now, silent tears running down his face, looking at me with something that might have been regret or might have been relief that the secret was finally out. "I loved you," I said quietly. "I would have given you everything, my whole life, and you threw it away for her." I didn't wait for his response, didn't want to hear whatever excuse he'd try to offer. I turned and ran, grabbed the front of my dress to keep from tripping on the train, ran down that aisle between 300 guests who parted like water, cameras flashing, people calling my name. I ran through the garden, through the estate, into the bridal suite. I made it inside, locked the door, and collapsed on the floor in that beautiful white dress. Sobs tore out of me so violent I thought they might actually break my ribs. My mother and bridesmaids were pounding on the door, but I couldn't let them in. Couldn't face anyone. Couldn't do anything but lie there on the floor and feel everything Dee believed in shatter into pieces too small to ever put back together. That was how the best day of my life became the worst. In the span of 5 minutes, I went from bride to humiliated disaster. From planning a future to having no idea how I'd survive the next 5 minutes. From trusting the two people closest to me to realizing I'd never really known them at all. And somewhere in the garden, Tessa was probably smiling, because phase 1 of her plan was complete. Destroy Serena publicly enough that she'd never recover. Make sure the humiliation was so total, so devastating, that I'd run far away and never look back. She succeeded. I ran, and I didn't look back for 3 years. The photos hit social media before I even left the venue. Someone's aunt had live-streamed the ceremony on Facebook. The moment Tessa announced the pregnancy had been captured from 6 different angles. By the time my mother finally convinced me to open the bridal suite door, the video had gone viral. Millions of views. Comments sections full of strangers dissecting my pain, taking sides, making jokes. The headlines came next. Billionaire's wedding destroyed by maid of honor's pregnancy bombshell. Fairy tale becomes nightmare as best friend announces affair. Tech CEO caught in love triangle at his own wedding. They were everywhere. Every gossip site, every tabloid, every social media platform. Photos of me running down the aisle, wedding dress trailing behind me, face twisted in anguish. That image became the visual representation of public humiliation. Memes, GIFs, reaction images, my worst moment commodified for entertainment. I couldn't go home that night. Too many photographers camped outside my apartment building. My parents took me to their house in Westchester. I sat in my childhood bedroom, still in my wedding dress, because I couldn't make my hands work well enough to unzip it. My mother finally did it for me. Helped me out of the dress like I was a child who couldn't manage on my own. Put me in pajamas, tucked me into my old bed. "I'll be right downstairs if you need me, sweetheart." Tried to get some rest, but I didn't sleep. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, my phone buzzing nonstop with calls and texts and notifications. I turned it off, turned it back on an hour later because I couldn't stand not knowing. The messages from people I hadn't talked to in years. I'm so sorry. I can't believe they did this to you. You deserve so much better. Empty words that changed nothing. Messages from actual friends asking if I was okay, if I needed anything, if they could help. I didn't respond to any of them. And then there were messages from Grayson. 47 calls in the first 12 hours. Voicemails I couldn't make myself listen to. Text messages that started apologetic and became increasingly desperate. Serena, please. I need to explain. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Please, talk to me. I know I don't deserve it, but please, I made a terrible mistake. The worst mistake of my life. I'm so sorry. I deleted them without reading past the first lines. What explanation could possibly matter? What words could make any of this okay? He'd slept with my best friend for 8 months. 8 months of lying to my face while I planned our wedding. 8 months of betrayal while I picked out flowers and tasted cake and chose a dress and believed I was building toward forever with someone who loved me. On day 2, flowers started arriving at my parents' house. Enormous arrangements. Roses, lilies, orchids. So many flowers the living room looked like a funeral home. Each bouquet came with a card in Grayson's handwriting. Please let me explain. It meant nothing. I'm so sorry. I love you. I've always loved you. Please don't give up on us. We can fix this. My father threw them all away, took the vases and dumped them in the outdoor trash before I could read the cards. I heard him on the phone with someone, his voice tight with rage. If you send one more flower to this house, I will personally come to your office and finish what I started at that wedding. Stay away from my daughter. Day 3, Tessa called, just once. I was staring at my phone when her name appeared on the screen. Some masochistic part of me answered, put the phone to my ear, said nothing. Serena? Her voice was soft, concerned. I wanted to make sure you're okay. I hung up without saying a word, blocked her number, blocked Grayson's number, blocked everyone associated with either of them. Day 5, I tried to leave the house. Made it as far as the end of the driveway before 3 photographers appeared from nowhere, cameras flashing. Serena, can you comment on the wedding disaster? How are you handling the betrayal? Did you have any idea about the affair? I turned and ran back inside. My father called the police about harassment, but there wasn't much they could do. Public property, freedom of the press. I was a public figure now, whether I wanted to be or not. My pain had become content. I stopped trying to leave, stopped looking at my phone except to scroll through the damage. I couldn't help myself. The articles kept coming. The comment sections were vicious. Poor girl. That's the most humiliating thing I've ever seen. The best friend and the fiancé. That's next level betrayal. Something must have been wrong with her if he went to the best friend. Men don't cheat when they're happy. She should have known. Women always know. That last one haunted me. Should I have known? Were there signs I missed? Was I so desperate to believe in the fairy tale that I ignored red flags? I replayed every moment of the last 8 months. Every time Tessa stayed late at my apartment. Every time Grayson seemed distant. Every time I came home to find them together, laughing at something I wasn't part of. Had I seen it and convinced myself I was imagining things? Week 2, the statement came. Grayson's publicist released it to major outlets. I saw it on my phone screen, trending on Twitter, impossible to avoid. Tessa Clark and I are expecting a child together. While the timing and manner of this announcement was regrettable, I am committed to taking responsibility and being present for my son. Tessa and I will be moving forward together as a family. I ask for privacy during this difficult time as we navigate this new chapter. I read it 3 times. Each time it made less sense and more sense simultaneously. He was choosing her, actually choosing her. The affair wasn't just a mistake. It was a relationship he intended to continue. They were going to be a family, raise a child together, build the life I thought I was building with him. I threw my phone across the room. It hit the wall and shattered. I didn't care. I got in bed and didn't get out for 3 days. My mother tried everything, brought me food I didn't eat, sat with me in silence, begged me to talk to someone, see a therapist, do something besides lie there disappearing. Baby, you have to get up. You have to eat something. You're wasting away. I don't care. He's not worth this. He's not worth you destroying yourself. I'm already destroyed. He did that. They did that. I'm just accepting reality. Day 20. I finally got up, took a shower for the first time in a week, looked at myself in the mirror. I'd lost weight. My face was hollow, dark circles under my eyes that looked like bruises. I looked like someone recovering from a serious illness, which I suppose I was. Heartbreak is an illness. It has physical symptoms: weight loss, insomnia, loss of appetite, inability to concentrate. I had all of them. I got my laptop, started looking for jobs in other cities. I couldn't stay in New York. Every street corner held memories, every restaurant we'd been to, every park we'd walked through, and the photographers weren't stopping. They were camped outside my apartment, my parents' house, my office. I'd already quit my job via email because I couldn't face going back, couldn't face the questions and the pity and the gossip. Portland, Oregon caught my eye. 3,000 miles away, a city where no one knew me, where I could start over completely, where Grayson and Tessa were just names with no faces attached. I found a studio apartment available immediately, applied online, got approved within hours, bought a one-way ticket with the last of my savings. I'm leaving. I told my mother, I can't stay here. Where will you go? Portland. I need to be somewhere I can breathe, somewhere he can't find me. She cried, held me, told me she understood, helped me pack 2 suitcases with clothes and essentials. Everything else I left behind. The apartment I'd shared with Grayson, I told my parents to hire movers and put everything in storage. I never wanted to see any of it again. The night before I left, I looked at social media one last time. A mistake. Tessa and Grayson had gone public with their relationship. Photos of them together. His hand on her visible baby bump. Captions about new beginnings and unexpected blessings and choosing happiness. They looked happy, glowing, like they'd found something real in the wreckage of my destroyed life. I saw one photo in particular that made something crack inside my chest. Tessa and Grayson at a baby store, looking at cribs. The caption read, "Preparing for our little man. Can't wait to meet you, baby Hayes." Heart emojis, comments full of congratulations. People who'd been at the wedding, who'd witnessed my humiliation, now celebrating their happiness like my pain had never happened. I closed the laptop, threw it in my suitcase, decided I was done with social media, done with New York, done with being the girl whose wedding became a viral disaster. Flight to Portland was early morning. My parents drove me to the airport before sunrise. My mother cried the whole way. "Call us when you land. Please, let us know you're safe." "I will, Mom. I promise. This isn't forever." My father's voice was rough with emotion. "You come back when you're ready. You come home." "I know, Dad." But I didn't know if I'd ever be ready. Didn't know if New York would ever feel like home again. Portland was gray and drizzling when I landed. Perfect. The weather matched my emotional state. I took a cab to the apartment I'd rented, sight unseen. A tiny studio in a quiet neighborhood. The landlord met me there with keys, asked no questions, left me alone. The apartment was unfurnished, except for a Murphy bed and a small table. I didn't care. I set my suitcases down, looked around at this empty space that represented my new life, and I felt nothing. No hope, no despair, just numbness. Blessed, merciful numbness. I spent the first week in that apartment doing nothing, sleeping, staring at the ceiling, ordering delivery food I barely touched. I'd brought enough money for maybe 2 months of rent and basic expenses. After that, I'd need a job, but I couldn't think about that yet. Could barely think at all. Week 2, I forced myself to leave the apartment, walked through my neighborhood in the constant drizzle. Portland was beautiful in a muted way. trees everywhere, coffee shops on every corner, people who didn't look at me twice because they had no idea who I was. The anonymity was medicine. I found a coffee shop 3 blocks from my apartment. Walked in, saw a help wanted sign in the window. "Are you still hiring?" I asked the woman behind the counter. She looked me over. "You have barista experience?" I lied. "Yes, 3 years." "Can you start tomorrow?" "Yes." "You're hired. I'm Emma. Be here at 6 a.m. Just like that, I had a job. Minimum wage plus tips, making coffee for strangers who knew nothing about viral wedding disasters or public humiliation. It was perfect. I learned to make lattes and cappuccinos from YouTube videos the night before my first shift. Showed up at 6 a.m., terrified I'd be exposed as a fraud. But Emma was patient, taught me the register, the espresso machine, the rhythms of morning rush. The work was meditative, repetitive. It required just enough concentration that I couldn't think about anything else. Grind beans, tamp espresso, steam milk, take orders, make drinks, repeat. Hours passed in a blur of coffee and small talk and blessed distraction. The customers became familiar faces without becoming familiar people. The regular who ordered a double-shot Americano every morning at 6:15. The woman who came in at 7 with her laptop and stayed until noon working on something she never discussed. The construction workers who ordered black coffee in bulk. I learned their orders, smiled politely, never offered personal information, never asked for theirs. It was exactly the level of human interaction I could handle. Months passed like this. 3 months became 4. 4 became 5. I moved through Portland like a ghost. Work, home, therapy once a week with a counselor I found through a sliding scale clinic. Dr. Michelle was patient and kind and didn't push me to heal faster than I was capable of. "You're experiencing complex trauma," she explained in our 3rd session. "Public humiliation on that scale, combined with intimate betrayal from 2 people you trusted completely. That's not something you just get over. Healing isn't linear. Some days will be better than others. The goal isn't to forget what happened. It's to integrate it into your story without letting it define your entire narrative." How do I do that? 1 day at a time, 1 moment at a time. You're already doing it by being here, by getting out of bed, by going to work. Those are acts of resilience, even if they don't feel like it. I don't feel resilient. I feel broken. You're not broken. You're healing. There's a difference. Those words stayed with me. Became something like a mantra on the hard days. Not broken. Healing. There's a difference. 6 months into my Portland life, I'd settled into a routine that felt sustainable if not exactly happy. Work at the coffee shop 6 days a week. Therapy on Thursdays. Long walks through the city on my days off. I'd started painting again, something I hadn't done since college. Nothing good, just colors on canvas. A way to externalize feelings I couldn't articulate with words. My studio apartment slowly filled with abstract paintings that all looked like chaos and grief rendered in acrylic. I didn't date, didn't even consider it. The idea of trusting someone with anything real made my chest tighten with anxiety. I'd trusted Grayson with my whole heart, and he'd shattered it. I'd trusted Tessa with 20 years of friendship, and she'd weaponized it. How was I supposed to trust anyone ever again? "You don't have to trust everyone," Dr. Michelle said. "You just have to leave the door open to the possibility that not everyone is Grayson or Tessa, that there are people in the world capable of loyalty and honesty." I'm not ready for that possibility. That's okay. You don't have to be ready. Just don't close the door permanently. The coffee shop became my anchor. The routine, the familiar faces, the simplicity of the work. There was a construction project 2 blocks down, a new building going up, something about sustainable housing and green architecture. The crew came in every morning, hard hats and work boots, ordering coffee by the gallon. Then the architects started coming. You could tell them apart from the construction workers easily. Cleaner clothes, rolled up blueprints, conversations about load-bearing walls and environmental impact. They came in a group usually, 3 or 4 of them, ordered complicated drinks, and argued about design choices while I made their lattes. I didn't pay much attention to them. They were just part of the morning routine, background noise while I went through the motions of existing. until the rainy Tuesday when one of them actually looked at me. It was early. The morning rush hadn't started yet. Just me behind the counter, wiping down the espresso machine, lost in the meditative quality of the task. The door chimed. I looked up out of habit, ready to take an order. A man stood there, early 30s maybe, tall, dark hair, that looked like he'd run his hands through it too many times. Kind eyes, a worn leather jacket that had seen better days but somehow looked perfect. He was staring at me with an expression I couldn't read. Confusion? Recognition? Something. "Can I help you?" My customer service voice, polite and distant. He didn't answer immediately, just kept staring. I was about to repeat the question when he said, almost whispered, "Serena?" My heart stopped. No one in Portland knew my name beyond Emma and my therapist. I'd introduced myself to customers as Sarah when they asked, had carefully constructed anonymity. Hearing my real name felt like being caught. "I'm sorry?" I kept my voice neutral. "I think you have me confused with someone else." No, I don't think so." He stepped closer to the counter. His face was cycling through emotions, disbelief, uncertainty. "You cut your hair. That's why I didn't recognize you at first. But it's you, Serena Martin, from Westchester. Oh my God, it's really you." My hands gripped the counter. Flight response screaming at me to run. But something about his face, his voice, was triggering a memory I couldn't quite access. I started to deny it again, but he interrupted. "It's Collins. Collins Wright. We dated in high school, junior and senior year, before my family moved to Seattle." And just like that, the memory flooded back. Collins Wright, my first boyfriend, my first love, 15 and 16 and 17 years old, convinced we'd found forever. He'd been sweet and artistic and made me laugh until my stomach hurt. We'd skipped school once to drive to the beach, got in so much trouble but agreed it was worth it. He'd held my hand through my grandfather's funeral, kissed me under the bleachers after football games, written me terrible poetry that I'd kept in a shoebox under my bed. And then his father got transferred to Seattle the summer before our senior year. His family moved suddenly. This was 2012, before everyone lived on social media. We'd promised to stay in touch, talked on the phone for a few months, but long distance at 17 was impossible. We drifted apart, lost contact completely within a year. I'd thought about him occasionally over the years, wondered where he ended up, what he was doing. If he remembered me the way I remembered him. Collins? I couldn't keep the shock out of my voice. His face broke into a smile, the same smile I remembered from a decade ago. "Yeah." "Kyle, I can't believe this. What are you doing in Portland?" I could have lied, could have kept my carefully constructed anonymity intact. But something about seeing him, this person from before everything went wrong, before Grayson and Tessa and the destruction, made me want to be honest. "I moved here 6 months ago, needed a fresh start." His expression shifted, became more careful, like he was reading subtext I wasn't saying. "Is everything okay?" "Long story. I have time." He glanced at the empty coffee shop. "Are you on a break anytime soon? Could we maybe catch up?" Every instinct screamed, no, screamed, protect yourself, screamed that everyone who gets close destroys you eventually. But I looked at Collins, really looked at him, and saw someone who'd been kind to me when we were kids, someone who'd never hurt me, someone from before my life became a disaster. "My break is in 20 minutes. I'll wait." He ordered a black coffee, took it to a corner table, pulled out his phone, but I could feel him glancing at me periodically while I worked. Not creepy, just curious, like he couldn't quite believe I was real. 20 minutes felt like an hour. Finally, Emma came out from the back to cover the counter. I poured myself a coffee, walked over to Collins's table, sat down across from him. It was inadequate, but I didn't know where else to start. "Hi," he was smiling. "I can't get over this. Out of all the coffee shops in all of Portland, you work at the one 2 blocks from my project." "Your project?" "I'm an architect now." He gestured vaguely toward the construction. That building going up? Sustainable housing. My firm designed it. I've been coming to this coffee shop for weeks, and I never. He shook his head. You look so different. I cut my hair. It looks beautiful. Really. Different, but beautiful. We sat in awkward silence for a moment. The weight of a decade between us. The weight of all the things we didn't know about each other's lives. So you're an architect. That's amazing. You always loved building things. Yeah. He smiled at the memory. Remember that year I tried to build you a treehouse in your backyard? It collapsed in like 2 days, because I had no idea what I was doing, but I got better. Went to University of Washington, got my degree, worked in Seattle for years, moved here about a year ago for this project, and honestly because I needed a change after my mom died. Oh, Collins, I'm so sorry. Thanks, it was cancer. 2 years ago. It was terrible watching her go through that. After she passed, Seattle just felt heavy. Too many memories. So when this job opportunity came up in Portland, I took it. I understand needing a fresh start. Is that why you're here? Fresh start? I nodded, trying to decide how much to share. Something about Collins, about the way he was looking at me with genuine interest and no judgment, made me want to be honest. I was engaged. It didn't work out. New York had too many memories, so I left. I'm sorry. That must have been hard. It was the understatement of the century, but I didn't correct him. Didn't launch into the whole story. Not yet. Maybe not ever. We talked for the rest of my break. Surface level, catching up. He told me about his architecture work, his love of Portland's green spaces, his small apartment downtown. I told him the edited version of my life. Moved here 6 months ago, working at the coffee shop while figuring out next steps. Liked the rain and the trees and the anonymity. When my break ended, he stood to leave. This was really good. Seeing you, catching up. Yeah, it was. Could we maybe do it again? Grab dinner sometime? As friends, just to catch up properly. I should have said no, should have protected myself. But I heard myself say yes. We exchanged numbers. He texted me later that day. A simple, "Hey, it's Collins. Just wanted to make sure you have my number. Looking forward to dinner." I stared at that text for 10 minutes before responding. Me too. Our first dinner was 3 days later. A small Italian restaurant he knew. Nothing fancy. We sat across from each other, and the conversation flowed easier than it had at the coffee shop. Maybe because we both knew this was intentional now. Not a chance encounter, but a choice to spend time together. He told me about Seattle, about watching his mother decline, about the decision to move. It sounds morbid, but her death gave me permission to change my life. She'd always wanted me to take risks, chase what I actually wanted, instead of playing it safe. Moving here, taking this job, it felt like honoring that. That's beautiful. In a sad way, but beautiful. What about you? He asked gently. You said your engagement didn't work out. Do you want to talk about it? Not really. Not yet. That's okay. No pressure. And he meant it. Didn't push. Didn't pry. Just accepted my boundary and moved the conversation elsewhere. We started seeing each other regularly after that. Coffee twice a week before my shift at the cafe. Weekend walks through Portland's endless parks. He took me to Powell's bookstore, this massive independent bookstore that took up an entire city block. We got lost in there for hours. He browsed the architecture section. I wandered through poetry, something I used to love but had abandoned. You should buy some. He appeared next to me while I was holding a collection of Mary Oliver poems. I don't know. I haven't read poetry in years. Why not? I gave it up, along with a lot of other things. Maybe it's time to take some things back. I bought the book, read it that night in my studio apartment. Cried over lines about wild geese and the soft animal of the body, and being loved anyway. Realized how much I'd missed this. Words that touched something deeper than surface conversation. 2 months into our renewed friendship, Collins invited me to the Oregon coast for the weekend. His firm had rented a cabin for a team retreat that got canceled. He had the reservation and didn't want to waste it. Separate bedrooms, no pressure, just a couple of old friends enjoying the coast. I should have said no, but I said yes. The cabin was small and perfect. 2 bedrooms, a kitchen with windows overlooking the ocean, a fireplace that Collins got working after 20 minutes of struggling with damp wood. We cooked dinner together, nothing fancy, pasta and salad and wine from a bottle he'd brought. Ate on the couch, watching the sun set over the Pacific. This is nice, I said it without thinking, then felt vulnerable having admitted it. It is, he smiled at me. I'm really glad you said yes to this. Me too. That night, sitting by the fire after dinner, Collins asked the question I'd been avoiding. Can I ask you something? You don't have to answer if you don't want to. Okay, what really happened? With your engagement? I could have deflected, could have kept my carefully constructed walls intact, but something about the firelight and the wine and the safety of this cabin miles from everything made me want to tell the truth. So I told him everything. Meeting Grayson, the 5-year relationship, the engagement, the wedding planning, Tessa helping with every detail, the cathedral full of 300 guests, Tessa standing up during the ceremony, the pregnancy announcement, Grayson's silence, the viral videos, the headlines, the complete destruction of my life in front of everyone I knew. By the time I finished, I was crying. Not the violent sobs from the early days, but quiet tears that wouldn't stop falling. Collins didn't say anything for a long moment. Then he moved from his chair to the couch next to me, put his arm around my shoulders, let me cry against him. He's the stupidest man alive, Collins said finally, and she was never your friend. Real friends don't do that. You deserved none of that. I feel so broken. You're not broken. He pulled back to look at me. You're here. You rebuilt your life from nothing. You got yourself across the country. You're working and healing and trying. That's not broken. That's incredibly strong. I don't feel strong. You are, though. Even if you can't see it yet. We stayed up talking until 2 in the morning, about betrayal and trust, and whether it was possible to ever really know another person, about grief and healing, and the non-linear path of both, about taking risks on people even when you're terrified. The next morning we walked on the beach. Collins found sea glass and handed me a piece of green glass, worn smooth by the ocean. Sometimes broken things become more beautiful. He said it simply, without performance. I kept that piece of sea glass, put it on the windowsill in my studio apartment, where morning light turned it translucent. 3 months became 6. Our friendship deepened into something I was afraid to name. Collins never pushed, never asked for more than I could give. But there were moments, hands brushing while we walked, his eyes lingering on my face, the way he smiled when I laughed at his terrible jokes. One night, 9 months after reconnecting, we were having dinner at my apartment. I'd cooked, badly, and we were laughing about my complete inability to follow a recipe. After dinner, we sat on my threadbare couch with cheap wine, comfortable silence between us. Serena. His voice was quiet. Can I tell you something? Of course. I think I'm falling for you. Again. Or maybe still. I don't know. But I need you to know that I'm not him. I'm not Grayson. I would never hurt you like that. My chest tightened. Every defense mechanism screamed at me to shut this down, to protect myself. Collins, you don't have to say anything, he interrupted gently. I just needed you to know, and I'm okay with whatever pace you need, whatever boundaries you need. I'm not going anywhere. I looked at him, really looked at him. This man, who'd shown up consistently for 9 months, who'd listened without judgment, who'd given me space to heal, who'd never once made me feel pressured or rushed. I'm terrified. The words came out small. I know. Everyone who says they love me destroys me. I'm not everyone. I know you're different. Logically, I know that. But my heart is having trouble believing any of this is safe. Then we'll wait until your heart catches up. He took my hand. I'm patient, and you're worth waiting for. We didn't sleep together that night. Didn't even kiss. Just sat on that couch holding hands like teenagers until he left around midnight. But something shifted. A door opening slightly. letting in the possibility of trust. A year after moving to Portland, I was starting to feel like a person again, instead of a wound in human form. I'd regained the weight I'd lost. My panic attacks were less frequent. I could go days without thinking about the wedding. Grayson and Tessa felt like characters in someone else's story. Collins and I were officially dating by then. Real dates with goodnight kisses that made my heart race. Hand-holding and flowers and conversations about futures instead of just surviving the present. He'd met my parents over video call. They loved him immediately. Your mother called me after and cried happy tears that I was healing. I still went to therapy weekly. Still had hard days where the betrayal felt fresh. Still struggled with trust. But I was building something new. Something real. 14 months after moving to Portland, Collins and I slept together for the first time. It was different than anything I'd experienced with Grayson. Slower, more present. With Grayson, sex had been intense, but somehow empty. Performance without real intimacy. With Collins, it felt like coming home. Like safety and passion coexisting. Afterwards, lying in his arms in his apartment, I said the words I'd been afraid to say. I love you. I think I never stopped loving you from when we were 17. I just forgot for a while. He kissed my forehead. I love you too. Always have. Always will. 15 months after the destroyed wedding, Collins proposed. Nothing elaborate. We were hiking in the Columbia River Gorge, stopped at a viewpoint overlooking a waterfall. He got down on one knee with a vintage ring that had belonged to his grandmother. Marry me. Not a big wedding. Just us and the people we love. Build a real life with me. A life based on honesty and showing up and choosing each other every day, even when it's hard. I cried. Happy tears this time. Yes. God, yes. We got married at the courthouse 2 months later. Just our parents and 2 close friends I'd made in Portland. I wore a simple white dress I bought off the rack. No cathedral. No 300 guests. No performance. Just love. Real, solid, safe love. I'm pregnant. I told Collins 3 months after the wedding. With twins. He'd cried, picked me up, and spun me around our small house. We're having babies. We're having a family. Harper and Sawyer were born healthy. A girl and a boy. 10 tiny fingers and 10 tiny toes each. They were perfect. Collins was an incredible father from day one. 2 a.m. feedings, diaper changes, walking the floor with a crying baby while I slept. We were a team. My life in Portland was nothing like the life I'd imagined in New York. It was smaller, quieter, but it was real. Built on truth instead of lies. On partnership instead of performance. I'd started my own small marketing agency working from home. Just me and a few freelance clients. Nothing like the empire I'd once dreamed of building. But it was mine, and it was enough. 1 month after the wedding that never happened, I was genuinely happy. The kind of happy that didn't require convincing myself. The kind that existed in quiet moments. Collins making coffee while I fed the babies. Weekend walks with the twins in their stroller. Paint on my hands from the art I'd started creating again. Laughter that came easily. Sleep that wasn't haunted by nightmares. I rarely thought about Grayson or Tessa anymore. They were ghosts from another life. Shadows that had lost their power to hurt me. Until the day Collins showed me the article. The twins were 6 months old. Harper on my hip while I folded laundry one-handed, a skill every parent of multiples masters out of necessity. Sawyer was napping upstairs. Collins was supposed to be at the office working on final plans for a new project. But he came home early. I heard his truck pull into the driveway. Heard the front door open. Serena. His voice had a quality I couldn't identify. Careful, like he was handling something fragile. In here. I called from the living room. He appeared in the doorway, holding his phone. He looked at me for a long moment. Then, at Harper, who was babbling happily on my hip, oblivious to whatever was about to happen. You need to see this. He said it gently. I debated not showing you, but you deserve to know. Know what? He crossed the room, handed me his phone. The screen showed a news article. The headline made my heart stop. Wedding homewrecker sentenced to 18 years in elaborate $8 million fraud scheme. Below the headline was a photo. Tessa, in handcuffs, being led into a courthouse. Her face was thinner than I remembered, harder, but unmistakably her. I read the article once, then again, then a third time because my brain couldn't process what my eyes were seeing. The words didn't make sense arranged in this order. Tessa Clark and Rhett Donovan, a convicted felon with a history of embezzlement, have been sentenced for an elaborate con that spanned 3 years and netted $8 million from tech CEO Grayson Hayes. The scheme, which began with Clark faking a pregnancy and announcing it at her best friend's wedding, was designed to position Clark as Hayes' partner and gain access to his company finances. The child at the center of the case, 2-year-old Asher, was determined through DNA testing to be Donovan's biological son, not Hayes' as Clark had claimed. Clark attempted to flee the country with the child and the stolen funds, but was apprehended at a private airfield. She has been sentenced to 18 years in federal prison with no possibility of parole for 12 years. Donovan received a reduced sentence of 5 years in exchange for his cooperation with prosecutors. I read it again. The words still didn't make sense. It was fake, I said out loud. My voice sounded strange, all of it, from the beginning. The pregnancy, the baby, everything. I kept reading. My hands were shaking, but I couldn't stop. Hayes, who raised Asher for 2 years believing the child was his biological son, lost an estimated $8 million to the scheme as well as his company, which declared bankruptcy following the scandal. The child has been placed in foster care pending adoption proceedings. Both Clark and Hayes have lost all parental rights. The article continued with details about the trial, about how Tessa and Rhett had planned everything, how they'd embezzled systematically for years, how Tessa had gotten pregnant with Rhett's baby specifically to trap Grayson, how the wedding announcement had been calculated for maximum destruction, how it had all been a con from the very first moment. Colin sat down next to me carefully. "Are you okay?" "I don't know." I looked at him, then back at the phone. She destroyed my life, humiliated me in front of 300 people, made me think my fiancé had betrayed me with my best friend. And it was all fake. The whole thing was a con to steal money. I'm so sorry. The baby wasn't even his. I felt hysteria rising in my throat. Grayson raised a child for 2 years that wasn't his, because of her lie, because of this whole elaborate scheme. Harper started fussing, picking up on my emotional state. Collins took her from me gently, bounced her while I sat there staring at the article. I should feel vindicated, I said after a long moment. I should feel satisfied that she got caught, that she's going to prison, that karma finally found her. But you don't. No. I feel nothing. Or maybe I feel grateful. Collins looked at me surprised. Grateful? If she hadn't done what she did, I'd have married him. I'd have legally tied myself to a man weak enough to sleep with my best friend, a man who couldn't even defend me when it mattered. I'd have wasted years, maybe decades, before figuring out who he really was. I gestured around our living room, at our life. I wouldn't have come here. I wouldn't have found you again. I wouldn't have this. He smiled softly. That's a really healthy way to look at it. She thought she was destroying me, and she did. But that destruction led me here, to a real life, real love, real partnership. She actually gave me everything that matters by taking away everything that didn't. I handed him back his phone, stood up, walked to the window overlooking our small backyard where we'd planted a garden last spring. I hope she rots in that prison, I said quietly. I hope every single day of those 18 years feels like an eternity. But I also don't care anymore. She's not worth my energy. She never was. Collins came to stand beside me, still holding Harper. What do you want to do? Do you want to talk about it more? Do you want to call your parents? Do you want to just move on? I want to finish folding laundry. I want to feed the babies. I want to have dinner with my husband and go to bed in our home and wake up tomorrow to this life I've built. That's what I want. So that's what we did. I folded laundry. We fed the twins. We had dinner. We lived our normal, beautiful, quiet life. And I meant what I said. Tessa, had become irrelevant, a ghost that had lost all power over me. But I'd be lying if I said I wasn't curious about how it all fell apart, about what happened in those 3 years while I was healing in Portland. So that night, after the twins were asleep and Collins was in the shower, I did something I hadn't done in almost 2 years. I looked up Grayson Hayes online. The articles painted a picture of complete destruction. His company had collapsed. The $8 million loss combined with the scandal had driven investors away. He'd been forced to sell at a massive loss just to cover debts. He'd gone from billionaire to just wealthy, still comfortable by normal standards, but nothing like before. His reputation was destroyed. Every article about the case mentioned how he'd been conned, manipulated, how he'd raised another man's child without knowing. There was a photo of him leaving the courthouse after Tessa's sentencing. He looked older, thinner, haunted, nothing like the confident CEO who'd proposed to me 3 years ago. I found myself feeling something unexpected, not satisfaction at his downfall, not vindication, just sadness. Sadness for all of us who'd been caught in Tessa's web. Sadness for that little boy Asher, who'd lost the only father he'd ever known. Sadness for the waste of it all. If this story is resonating with you, if you've ever had to rebuild your life after betrayal, I need you to do something for me right now. Hit that subscribe button, because we're about to dive into what happened behind the scenes, the parts the news articles didn't cover, the human cost of Tessa's con. And if you're still with me, drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from, or just say I'm with you, Mr. Hearthline. Your engagement helps this story reach people who need to hear it. Now, let me tell you what really happened in those 3 years, while I was in Portland healing, while I was falling in love with Collins, and building a new life. Tessa and Grayson were living their own nightmare. The articles made it sound simple: affair, con, embezzlement, arrest. But the reality was so much more complicated. The first few months after the destroyed wedding, Tessa and Grayson played happy couple for social media. The photos I'd seen before leaving New York were real. Apartment hunting, baby shopping, gender reveal parties. They looked happy in those photos, but appearances are always lies when you look close enough. Behind closed doors, Grayson was drowning in guilt and regret. He'd destroyed his relationship with the woman he'd actually loved for someone who'd manipulated him into it. And Tessa was exactly what she'd always been: cold, calculating, already planning the next phase of the con. Rhett got the job at Grayson's company 2 months after the wedding. Tessa had helped him create fake credentials, a resume that looked impressive but couldn't withstand serious scrutiny. Fortunately, Grayson wasn't looking closely. He was too consumed with guilt and the impending baby and trying to make sense of his choices. Rhett started as assistant CFO. He was good at his job, or at least good at appearing to be good at his job. Charming in meetings, competent with numbers. Nobody suspected that every day he was identifying weak points in their financial systems, finding places where money could disappear without immediate detection. The embezzlement started small: 10,000 here, 20,000 there. Amounts that could be explained as accounting errors if anyone noticed. But nobody noticed. Grayson's company was growing fast, money flowing in and out constantly. A few $1,000s missing was noise in the system. Asher was born 4 months after the destroyed wedding. Grayson was at the hospital, held his son for the first time, felt that overwhelming rush of love and protectiveness that comes with becoming a parent. The baby had dark hair, darker than Grayson's. But babies' features change. Nobody questioned it. "I have a son," Grayson called his mother from the hospital, his voice thick with emotion. "Mom, I'm a dad." "Congratulations, sweetheart." She'd been disapproving of the entire situation, the affair, the destroyed wedding, the pregnancy. But she was trying to be supportive. "What's his name?" Asher Hayes." "He's beautiful," Tessa said from the hospital bed. She looked exhausted. She'd just given birth, but there was something in her eyes when she looked at Asher. Something Grayson couldn't quite read. He assumed it was love. Maternal bond. He didn't realize it was calculation. This baby was a tool, a way to keep Grayson trapped and compliant. The first year of Asher's life, Tessa was a terrible mother when cameras weren't around. She hired a nanny to do everything. Diaper changes, middle of the night wake-ups. She couldn't be bothered, but when Grayson was home, or when they were in public, she performed perfectly. Doting mother. Instagram posts about blessed and grateful and my whole world. Grayson bonded with Asher immediately and completely. Loved that little boy with everything he had, which made him easier to manipulate. Whenever he expressed doubt about their relationship, whenever he mentioned maybe this wasn't working, Tessa would deploy the baby. Are you really going to abandon your son? Just like your father abandoned you? Grayson's father had left when he was 8. It was his deepest wound, the thing that had driven him to build his company, to prove himself, to never be the kind of man who walked away. Tessa knew this, used it like a weapon. I would never abandon Asher. Then stop talking about leaving. We're a family. You chose this. You chose us. And Grayson, weak and trapped and drowning in guilt, would stay. By the end of year 1, Rhett had embezzled $2 million. Small transfers to offshore accounts, shell companies that existed only on paper, money that disappeared into financial structures so complex that even a forensic accountant would need months to untangle them. Year 2, the amounts got bigger. 500,000 here, $1 million there. Rhett had established patterns that made the transfers look legitimate. Grayson's company was struggling now, profits declining for reasons nobody could identify, investors getting nervous, board meetings where people demanded answers Grayson couldn't provide. What's happening to our numbers? One board member demanded, we should be growing. Instead, we're hemorrhaging money. I don't know. Grayson looked at Rhett. The financial reports all look solid on paper. They are solid, Rhett said smoothly. We're investing heavily in expansion. The returns will come. We just need to be patient. But the returns never came, because there was no expansion, just systematic theft disguised as legitimate business expenses. At home, Grayson and Tessa's relationship was toxic. They had separate bedrooms, barely spoke except to argue or coordinate around Asher. The love, if it had ever existed, was long dead. What remained was resentment and manipulation, and the legal and social bonds of shared parenthood. Why are you even with me? Grayson asked one night after a particularly brutal fight. You clearly don't love me. I don't love you. Why are we doing this? Because of Asher. Because you destroyed your last relationship for this one, and you don't get to just walk away when it gets hard. Because this is the choice you made, and you have to live with it. This isn't living. This is just existing in misery. Then you should have thought about that before you slept with your fiancé's best friend. She was right, and he knew it. This was the consequences of his choices. The bed he'd made. And Asher, innocent Asher who called him Dada and reached for him with chubby toddler hands, deserved a father who didn't abandon him. So Grayson stayed in the misery, stayed in the lie, stayed while his company died, and his relationship rotted, and his life became something unrecognizable. 2 years after the destroyed wedding, Tessa and Rhett had accumulated $8 million in offshore accounts. The plan was complete. Time for the final phase, disappear. They met at their usual motel outside the city, a cheap place where they'd been meeting for 3 years, where Grayson would never think to look. Rhett had new passports ready, new identities, plane tickets to the Cayman Islands, a new life waiting. 2 more weeks. Rhett spread the documents on the motel bed. I'll make the final transfer, then we take Asher, and we're gone. New names. New country, $8 million to start over. Tessa looked at the passports, at the future they'd planned. Then she looked at Rhett, really looked at him, and made a calculation about that. Her voice was casual, too casual. About what? The plan. I've been thinking, 8 million split 2 ways is 4 million each, yeah? Rhett didn't see it coming. That's what we agreed. But 8 million for just me is so much better. Rhett went very still. What are you saying? I'm saying you were useful, Rhett. You helped me get the money. You played your part perfectly, but I don't actually need you anymore. Are you out of your mind? This was my plan too. That's my money. That's my son. Actually, it's Grayson's money. And as far as the world knows, Asher is Grayson's son. You legally don't exist in his life. I made sure of that. Tessa, his voice was dangerous now. Don't do this. I already did. Changed all the account passwords this morning. You're locked out. The money is mine. Asher is mine. You get nothing, you bitch. Rhett stood up, fury radiating off him. We had a deal, and I'm breaking it. What are you going to do? Go to the police? Tell them I stole money that you helped me steal? You're a convicted felon. I'm a struggling single mother. Who do you think they'll believe? I'll tell Grayson everything. I'll burn this whole thing down. Go ahead. She smiled. It'll destroy you too. You'll go to prison. And I'll play the victim. Say you manipulated me, forced me into it. I'm very good at playing the victim. You've seen me do it. Rhett stared at her, seeing clearly for the first time what she really was. Not a partner, not even really human, just pure ambition and selfishness, wrapped in attractive packaging. You'll regret this. His voice shook with rage. I will make you regret this. No. She picked up her purse, walked toward the door. You really won't. Goodbye, Rhett. Thanks for everything. She left him there in that motel room, drove away without looking back. And Rhett sat there processing the magnitude of his mistake. He'd helped her con Grayson, helped her steal millions, helped her destroy Serena's life. And now she'd betrayed him exactly the way she'd betrayed everyone else. He'd lost everything. The money, his son, 3 years of his life spent building a con that had just collapsed. And Tessa was walking away with all of it. Fine, he said to the empty room. If I'm going down, she's coming with me. Rhett went directly to Grayson's office the next morning, walked past security, burst into the executive suite where Grayson was reviewing financial reports that made no sense. We need to talk. Rhett's voice was cold. About Tessa, about your money, about the son you think is yours. Grayson looked up, confused, alarmed. What are you talking about? Sit down. You're going to want to sit down for this. Over the next 2 hours, Rhett confessed everything. The plan. The con. How he and Tessa had been together for years. How she'd gotten pregnant with his baby deliberately. How they'd planned the wedding destruction down to the smallest detail. How the affair had been staged to trap Grayson. How they'd spent 3 years embezzling $8 million. How Asher was Rhett's biological son, not Grayson's. How Tessa had planned to disappear. How she'd betrayed Rhett the same way she'd betrayed everyone else. Rhett had proof. Emails between him and Tessa. Text messages planning every detail. Bank records showing the transfers. A paternity test he'd kept as insurance. Everything. Grayson sat there, listening to his entire life, revealed as a lie. The woman he destroyed Serena for had never loved him, had only ever seen him as a mark. The child he'd raised for 2 years, the child he loved more than anything, wasn't his. The company he'd built was dying because his own employee had been systematically stealing from him. Every single thing he'd believed was a lie. Why are you telling me this? Grayson's voice came out barely a whisper. Because she betrayed me too, and I want her to pay. Help me bring her down, and I'll testify. I'll give you everything. Grayson went to federal authorities that afternoon, brought Rhett's evidence. The FBI started investigating immediately. Within 72 hours, they had warrants for both Tessa and Rhett's arrests. But when they went to arrest Tessa at the penthouse she'd shared with Grayson, she was gone. Cleaned out, taken Asher, disappeared. She'd realized Rhett would talk, had run. The FBI tracked her to a private airfield 30 miles outside the city. She'd booked a flight to the Cayman Islands under a fake name, had 2 suitcases full of cash and valuables, had 2-year-old Asher confused and crying because he didn't understand why they were leaving in the middle of the night. Federal agents surrounded the small plane just as Tessa was boarding. Tessa Clark, FBI. Step away from the aircraft with your hands visible. Tessa froze on the steps leading into the plane, looked around, Saw agents everywhere, guns drawn, no escape route. She was trapped. She picked up Asher, held him against her chest, thinking maybe they wouldn't arrest her with a child in her arms, thinking she could use him as a shield one final time, put the child down, and step away from the plane. The lead agent's voice was firm. Now. He's my son. Tessa's voice was desperate, shaking. I'm just taking my son on vacation. We have warrants for your arrest, embezzlement, fraud, child custody interference. Asher isn't listed on your travel documents. This isn't. I was so careful. Tessa's voice cracked. The reality of being caught was hitting her. This wasn't supposed to happen. Put the child down. Last warning. Tessa slowly set Asher down. An agent immediately took him to safety. And Tessa Clark was arrested, handcuffed, read her rights, put into a federal vehicle while cameras captured everything. Because of course there were cameras. The media had been tipped off. This story was too good to miss. The woman who destroyed a billionaire's wedding in viral fashion was now being arrested for an elaborate con. The symmetry was perfect. The same media that had broadcast Serena's humiliation now broadcast Tessa's. Tessa sat in the back of that federal vehicle watching the cameras flash and realized she'd lost everything. The money would be seized. The child wasn't legally hers since Grayson was on the birth certificate, and she was about to be convicted of fraud. Her freedom was gone. Everything she'd schemed for, everything she'd destroyed other people to get, all of it gone. The trials happened quickly. Rhett pleaded guilty, agreed to testify against Tessa in exchange for a reduced sentence. He got 5 years with possibility of parole after 3. Still prison, still consequences, but nothing like what Tessa faced. Tessa's trial was a media sensation. Court TV covered it live. Social media dissected every moment. The photos from Serena's wedding resurfaced. People connected the dots. The destroyed wedding had been the opening move in an $8 million con. The best friend's betrayal had been calculated from the start. The public was fascinated and horrified. The evidence against Tessa was overwhelming. Rhett's testimony, bank records, emails and texts planning everything. Timeline showing she got pregnant before the affair with Grayson even started. Expert witnesses explaining how elaborate and premeditated the entire scheme was. Grayson testified for the prosecution, sat on that witness stand and described how he'd been manipulated, how Tessa had fed his doubts about marriage, how she'd positioned herself as the alternative, how he'd fallen for it completely. When did you learn Asher wasn't your biological son? The prosecutor asked. When Rhett Donovan came to my office with a paternity test. Grayson's voice broke. Asher is 2 years old. I've been raising him, loving him, thinking he was mine. He's not. How did that make you feel? Like everything I destroyed was for nothing. Grayson looked directly at the jury. I ruined the woman I loved. I humiliated her in front of 300 people, destroyed a 5-year relationship, and it was all based on a lie. Did Miss Clark ever express remorse? Never. She manipulated me constantly, made me feel guilty whenever I questioned anything, told me I loved her, that I'd chosen her. But it was all calculated, every moment of it. Tessa sat at the defense table showing no emotion. Her lawyer tried to paint her as a victim of Rhett's manipulation, but the evidence was too clear. The jury didn't buy it. Guilty on all counts. Embezzlement, wire fraud, identity fraud, paternity fraud, attempted kidnapping. The verdict came back after 6 hours of deliberation. Sentencing happened 2 weeks later. Tessa stood before the judge to hear her fate. Miss Clark, you orchestrated one of the most elaborate and cruel fraud schemes this court has seen. The judge's voice was cold. You didn't just steal money. You destroyed lives with calculated precision. You betrayed your best friend since childhood. You manipulated multiple men. You committed paternity fraud. You attempted to kidnap a child. And you've shown absolutely no remorse. Tessa finally spoke, her voice flat, empty. I did what I had to do to survive. Serena had everything handed to her. I had nothing. I just wanted what she had. And look where that got you. The judge's response was immediate. 18 years in federal prison. No possibility of parole for 12 years. $8 million in restitution. Permanent loss of parental rights to the child known as Asher Hayes. Tessa's face finally broke. The reality of 18 years in prison hit her. She would be 45 years old when she got out if she made parole at 12 years. Her entire youth sacrificed for a con that hadn't even worked. She sobbed as they led her away. The cameras caught it all. The same cameras that caught Serena running from her destroyed wedding. Poetic justice played out in high definition. But the real cost wasn't Tessa's imprisonment. It was everyone else's destruction. Grayson lost almost everything. His company declared bankruptcy. He was forced to sell at a massive loss. Went from billionaire to just comfortable. His reputation was destroyed. Every article called him the CEO who got conned, who didn't notice 8 million disappearing, who raised another man's child. And Asher, 2-year-old Asher, who'd done nothing wrong. He was placed in foster care. Grayson had no legal rights because he wasn't the biological father. Rhett was the biological father, but he was going to prison. Tessa had lost parental rights. That little boy would be adopted by strangers, would grow up not remembering the man who'd raised him for 2 years. 6 months after Tessa's sentencing, Grayson was allowed one final supervised visit with Asher. He drove to the foster home, walked into the visitation room with its bright yellow walls and child-sized furniture and observation window, and waited. A social worker brought Asher in. The little boy was bigger than Grayson remembered. Almost 3 now. Dark curls and confused eyes. Dada? Asher's voice was uncertain, like he half remembered this person but wasn't sure. Hey, buddy. Grayson knelt down to his level. His voice was breaking. It's so good to see you. Home? Asher looked around. Go home? I can't take you home. The words physically hurt. I wish I could, but I can't. I need you to know something though, okay? Even though I'm not your biological father, even though everything got so complicated, I love you. I will always love you, and none of this was your fault. Asher didn't understand. He was too young. He just held up a toy truck. Play? So they played. For 2 hours, Grayson pushed trucks across carpet and stacked blocks and pretended everything was normal. Pretended this wasn't the last time he'd ever see this child he'd raised. This child he'd loved. This child who called him Dada. Time's up. The social worker's voice was gentle but firm. No. Asher's face crumpled. He understood this part. Dada, no. I'm so sorry, Grayson whispered. I'm so sorry for all of it. The social worker had to physically take Asher. The little boy started screaming, reaching for Grayson, sobbing. Dada, no. Dada. Grayson walked out while those screams followed him down the hallway, made it to his car before he completely broke down. This was the real cost of Tessa's con. An innocent child traumatized. A bond severed that could never be repaired. 3 years after the destroyed wedding, everyone's lives looked completely different. Tessa sat in a federal prison cell, year 2 of an 18-year sentence. She shared the cell with a woman serving time for assault. Had no visitors because her mother had disowned her after the trial. Worked in the prison laundry for 12 cents an hour. Spent every day in an 8x10 cell thinking about what she'd lost. One day she was going through a box of old belongings her mother had sent before cutting contact. Found a photo at the bottom. 8x10. Glossy. 2 little girls maybe 10 years old with their arms around each other. Genuine smiles. Tessa and Serena at someone's birthday party decades ago. Tessa stared at that photo for a long time. Remembered when that picture was taken. Remembered actually being happy, actually loving Serena, before jealousy poisoned everything, before her mother's words planted seeds of resentment, before she convinced herself that Serena had stolen the life that should have been hers. I loved you, Tessa whispered to the photo, tears streaming down her face. I really loved you, and I destroyed you because I hated myself. She ripped the photo slowly. Once, twice, until the smiling girls were just confetti in her palm. Let the pieces fall to the floor of her cell. The only person who'd ever really loved her, and she'd burned that bridge so thoroughly there was no rebuilding it. 18 years. She'd be 45 when she got out. Everything she'd wanted, money, status, comfort, luxury, all of it traded for a concrete box, and 12 cents an hour, and the knowledge that she'd destroyed multiple lives for nothing. Rhett was in a different facility. Year 2 of his 5-year sentence. Up for parole in 1 more year. He'd been a model prisoner, but when he got out, he'd be a convicted felon with no money and no prospects. And his biological son had been adopted by another family. He had no rights, would never see Asher again. Everything he'd built with Tessa had been destroyed by her final betrayal. Grayson lived alone in a modest 2-bedroom apartment in Manhattan, nothing like the penthouse he'd owned before. He worked as a senior director at a mid-sized tech company, made good money, but nothing like before. Drove a used car, lived quietly, went to therapy 3 times a week, trying to process the guilt and regret and loss. His therapist asked him the hard questions, made him confront the truth about himself. Why do you think you cheated on Serena? Grayson had spent months avoiding this question, blaming Tessa's manipulation, blaming circumstances, blaming anything but himself. But finally, he answered honestly, because I was bored. The words tasted like ash. Serena was good, stable, kind, predictable. And I wanted chaos. I wanted to feel wanted in a way that felt dangerous. So, you didn't actually love her. I loved the idea of her. Grayson's voice broke. I loved how she made me look. Successful CEO with the perfect fiancé. But I didn't love her the way she deserved. Not until it was too late. Not until I'd already destroyed everything. Can you change? I don't know. I'm trying. But I wake up every day knowing I destroyed the only real thing I ever had for a lie. That I humiliated the kindest person I've ever met. That I chose wrong, and I can never undo it. He'd tried to find Serena, hired private investigators who found nothing. She'd changed her name, had no social media presence, had disappeared completely. Her parents refused to give him any information, threatened a restraining order if he didn't stop asking. So Grayson existed in his modest life, working in therapy, and the endless loop of regret. No romantic relationships, no real friends, just the consequences of his choices playing out in slow motion. If you've made it this far in the story, I need you to do something. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who's rebuilding after betrayal. Someone who thinks their life is over because of what someone else did to them. Hit that share button. And comment where you're watching from, or just say, I'm with you, Mr. Hearthline. Because we're almost at the end. I promise you, the ending will remind you why some doors need to close before the right ones can open. And then there was me, Serena, 3 years and 2 months after the destroyed wedding. 29 years old, living in Portland with Collins and our 6-month-old twins. We had a small craftsman house in a quiet neighborhood. Both of us had thriving careers. Harper and Sawyer were healthy and beautiful. Our life was simple, but full. Real in a way my life with Grayson never was. I rarely thought about New York anymore. Rarely thought about that day in the cathedral. It felt like something that happened to someone else in another lifetime. I'd built a completely new life, new name, new city, new family, new everything. Until the Saturday afternoon, when everything collided. I was folding laundry in the living room, Harper playing with blocks on the floor, Sawyer napping upstairs. Collins was supposed to be at a client meeting, but I heard his truck in the driveway earlier than expected. Heard footsteps on the porch, the front door opening. Serena. His voice had an edge I couldn't identify. Yeah, I called back without looking up from the laundry. He appeared in the doorway. You have a visitor. I looked up, confused. We weren't expecting anyone. Who? And then I saw him, standing on our porch, looking through the screen door into our home. Older, thinner, completely out of place in our Portland life. Grayson Hayes. My heart stopped. Every muscle in my body went rigid. Collins moved to stand between me and the door. Protective. I told him you didn't want to see him. Collins said quietly. But he insisted. I stood slowly. picked up Harper, who'd started fussing, sensing the tension, walked to the door on legs that didn't feel entirely stable, looked at Grayson through the screen. This man I'd almost married, this man who'd destroyed me. This stranger. What are you doing here? My voice was steady, stronger than I felt. I need to talk to you. Grayson's voice was rough. Please, just 5 minutes. She doesn't want to talk to you. Collins's voice was calm but firm. You need to leave. Please. Grayson looked past Collins directly at me. I know I don't deserve it, but please. I could have said no. Could have told Collins to call the police. Could have closed the door on this chapter of my life permanently. But something made me open that screen door, step out onto the porch. Face him. 5 minutes, I said. Then you leave, and you never come back. Grayson's eyes took in everything. The house. Collins standing protectively in the doorway. Harper on my hip, looking at this stranger with wide eyes. The life I'd built that had nothing to do with him. I saw the article about Tessa. I wanted to make sure you knew. I know. I saw it too. I'm so sorry for everything. I know it doesn't mean anything now, but I need you to know. I never meant for any of it to happen the way it did. You slept with my best friend for 8 months. I shifted Harper to my other hip. You planned a wedding with me while you were sleeping with her. You stood at that altar and said nothing when she announced her pregnancy. What part of that wasn't intentional? All of it. None of it. I don't know. His face was anguished. I was weak. I let her manipulate me. I fed my own doubts about marriage. I made terrible choices. And you paid the price. Yes, I did. You destroyed me on what should have been the happiest day of my life. You humiliated me in front of 300 people. You were weak, and you were a coward, and you don't get closure from me. I know. Tears were streaming down his face now. I know I don't deserve anything from you. I just needed you to know that I know. I know what I lost. I know what I destroyed. I think about you every single day and what we could have been if I hadn't ruined it. But I'm not angry anymore. The words surprised me even as I said them. Because you actually did me a favor. If I'd married you, I'd be miserable. I'd be tied to someone who didn't really love me. Someone who crumbled under pressure. Someone who couldn't be loyal. I gestured to Collins. To our house. To Harper. To everything. Instead, I have this. A real home. A real partner. Someone who shows up every single day. Someone who chose me and keeps choosing me. Real love. You gave me that by taking away everything that was fake. Grayson's face showed complete devastation. I'm glad you're happy. I really am. You deserve that. I know what I deserve, I said gently. And it was never you. I started to go back inside, then stopped, turned back to him one final time. I hope you figure out how to live with yourself. Not for me. I don't care about you anymore. But for you, for the next person. Because right now you're just a cautionary tale about what happens when you choose fear over love. I went inside, locked the door behind me, watched through the window as Grayson stood on my porch for a long moment, then turned, walked back to his rental car, got in, drove away, gone. Collins wrapped his arms around me from behind. Harper giggled between us. You okay? I thought about it. Really thought about it. Yeah, I really am. That night after the twins were asleep, Collins and I sat on our back porch. Rain falling softly on the roof. Portland's eternal lullaby. Do you regret any of it? He asked quietly. The path you took to get here? No, I meant it completely. Every terrible thing led me here. To you, to them, to this life. I wouldn't change any of it. Not even the wedding? Especially not the wedding. That was the day I stopped living someone else's idea of my life and started building my own. I leaned against him, felt the solid warmth of his shoulder, the steady beat of his heart. I used to think love meant never being hurt, that if someone really loved you, they'd protect you from everything. But that's not love, that's possession. What's love then? Collins asked. This, showing up, being honest, choosing each other even when it's hard, building something real, instead of performing something perfect. I choose you. He kissed the top of my head. Every day, even the hard ones. I know. That's how I know it's real. Inside, Harper started crying, which meant she'd woken Sawyer. Both babies would need feeding, changing, soothing back to sleep. The endless work of parenting. Welcome to the rest of our lives. I stood, stretched, wouldn't want to be anywhere else. Collins followed me inside. We went to our crying babies, to messy floors and imperfect, beautiful real life. And I realized something with perfect clarity. I'd never been happier. Not happy like the fake social media version of happy. Not happy like performing for 300 wedding guests. Just genuinely, quietly, deeply happy. The kind of happy that exists in small moments. Collins making coffee while I fed the twins. Weekend walks with babies in the stroller. Paint on my hands from art I'd started creating again. Laughter that came easily. Sleep that wasn't haunted. Somewhere across the country, Grayson was driving back to his hotel. Probably regretting the confrontation. Probably wishing he could undo everything. He'd spend the rest of his life wondering what if. Living with consequences he couldn't escape. Somewhere in a federal prison, Tessa sat in her cell. Year 2 of 18. Every single day, a reminder of what her jealousy had cost her. She'd destroyed the one person who'd actually loved her. Had traded everything for nothing. But here in Portland, in this small house with rain on the roof, and babies in there, cribs and a partner who chose me every single day, I had everything that mattered. Not because I was lucky, because I'd survived, because I'd chosen healing over bitterness, because I'd had the courage to build something new from the ashes of everything that burned. The door was closed. The chapter was over. The story was finally completely mine, and that was the happiest ending of all. Before we finish, I need you to do 3 things. 1. Hit that like button if you believe in karma and second chances. 2. Subscribe to Mr. Hearthline Stories, because I have more incredible true stories of resilience and justice and hope coming your way. 3. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. Have you ever had to rebuild your life after betrayal? Or just let me know you made it to the end by saying, "I'm with you, Mr. Hearthline." Your engagement helps this story reach someone who needs to hear it today. Someone sitting in their own ruins wondering if they'll ever be whole again. Someone who needs to know that sometimes the door that closes in your face is the one that was blocking your blessing. This is Mr. Hearthline reminding you that betrayal reveals character, it doesn't create it. That healing isn't linear, but it is possible. That the worst day of your life might actually be the best thing that ever happened to you. You just can't see it yet. Keep your heart open, keep your head high, and remember that some people come into your life to teach you what real love isn't. So you'll recognize it when it finally arrives. Until next time, I'm with you, always.